A third night of searching through the rubble for survivors in Turkey and Syria. How to deal with the disaster. Turkey and its citizens have long experienced in the sudden tragedy that comes with living on two fault lines. In Monday's earthquakes, structures new and old tumbled alike. How best to get those still alive under the rubble. Across in northern Syria, 12 years of civil war amplifying the disaster, with neglected infrastructure particularly vulnerable and aid even slower to arrive, particularly to rebel-held areas. Should the Turkish border be opened? Should foreign aid transit through under-sanctions Damascus? It's too soon to appraise how this natural disaster will change the course of international relations or the outcome of Turkish elections slated for May. But crisis management will be under scrutiny. And in a nation where the last quake of this magnitude dates back to the rise to power of the incumbent, voters will ask if the lessons of 1999 will have been learned. We're doing a special edition of the France 24 debate. We're going to be joined from Gaziantep by France 24's Nadia Massi, who's been following those rescue efforts. Syrian journalist Liwa Shawaf, CEO of Razana Media, is also with us from Gaziantep. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
From Cairo, Nirvana Shauki, Middle East Director of the Christian charity CARE. And we'll be joined here in the studio by Badouani Ruban, former director of UNESCO's Catastrophe Prevention Unit, and political scientist and historian Nora Seni. Your reactions, your thoughts on the hashtag F24 debate. 48 hours on, the shock of the devastation still sinking in. We could show you images of Karan Marash near the epicenter of the second quake, 48 hours on, and the official death toll topping 11,000. The sleepless race to rescue survivors in the cold continuing around the clock.
Yüksek sesle! İnşallah, şükür, çok şükür, çok şükür.
Neredeyim?
يا رب عمو نور طلع علي لهون يا عمو نور
بابا هون نور
حكي البابا حكي ايوه ما شاء الله ما شاء الله هيك البابا حكي يا بابا
صفرنا يا رب
هاي البنت في معها كدمة شديدة على الظهر مع التورم،
Geçmiş olsun. Geçmiş olsun. Allah yar yardımcımız olsun.
Allahu Ekber. Hemşire döndürelim.
يا احمد حط البلوك الخاطئ مشان يكون عندك مجال هناك شوي نشوي شوي يلا
Yeah, let's begin in Gaziantep, near the epicenter of one of the first of those two quakes. Lina Shawaf, it's been a little over 48 hours. We've seen those images. It seems to have to just been relentless. What's it like where you are right now?
Yeah, we are facing still aftershock, but it was before. It was every 1 hour, 2 hours. Now it is every 4 hours. Today during the day we faced one strong one, like 5.2. So the people a little bit panic and go out. Yeah, we're still facing this aftershock. The problem that there is a lot of building who is too damaged and it's cracking. So when we have a little bit of strong after shock, the building is destroyed. So this is the problem. Nobody is allowed to go back to their home, to their apartment. So everybody's still in the street or in the center of the center that they open for just to stay. So it's still tragic. It's going slowly down with the aftershock, but it takes time.
It's taking time. And Gaziantep, where you are, the earthquake has flattened even parts of a 2,000-year-old Roman-era castle. This is parts of the near. This is the footage of that, which is quite impressive. Parts of the nearby Servani Mosque also collapsing. And as promised, we're joined here in the studio by Badouai Ruban, former director of UNESCO's Catastrophe Prevention Unit, and by Nora Seni, historian, political scientist, and the administrator of the digital news magazine radargazette.com. Roman-era structures falling. What's your reaction to that?
It's a great pity. Great pity. What do you want to say? But this is not the fault of anyone. I think this is the earthquake.
Turkey is a country that's used to earthquakes.
Yes, of course. You remember the 1999 earthquake. It was a very violent one. And after this earthquake, there was a disposal of new laws that were supposed to be applied. And for example, places in the city where people can gather, and that there were these places were not open to construction, etc. And this was not obeyed. I mean, these laws were not obeyed, and the constructions, the material of the constructions are sometimes not what they have to be. So you have houses, buildings that stay straight, and just near them, the other building is flat to the earth, destroyed totally.
Badouai Ruban, an earthquake of 7.8 magnitude at a very shallow level even if you build to code, is it enough?
If you build it to code, yes. If the construction is conceived and respects the anti-seismic code, yes. But before I go ahead with the answer to your question, this image of the cultural heritage, of course, time now is not to talk about the subject. Time now is for rescue and relief. But it does also remind what we have seen in the Bam earthquake in Iran. When we saw the citadel of Bam, similar image, collapse completely.
Because these are 2,000-year-old structures. Presumably,
Yes.
those were built to last. They've been through many earthquakes.
Yes, yes, yes. But it means also that in a few weeks, both in Turkey and Syria, we will be facing a loss of cultural heritage. Time is not now to talk about this, but we will be seeing cultural heritage, cultural monument affected, collapse, and a loss of this kind of heritage. Now, the earthquake 7.8 is also a big one. It is not a normal earthquake. We have seen a cocktail of factors which will make of this event a major catastrophe, a major event.
Joining us now from Cairo, Nirvana Shawki, Middle East Director of the Christian charity CARE. Thank you for being with us here on France 24. Can we call it a perfect storm, what happened on Monday? First of all, that first quake taking place at 4 in the morning at a time when people are at home and in bed and asleep.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. It is the perfect storm. It is particularly for the people in northwest Syria. It is a disaster on the so many crises and the so many suffering that they have been living since more than a decade now. And we can see how many villages, many cities have actually been total rubble and are completely lost. And the humanitarian crisis has been exacerbated in the last 72 hours in a more disastrous situation than what we have anticipated ever or expected, especially earlier this year when we were negotiating for the cross-border resolution renewal in early January.
We had one medic that we spoke with on Tuesday that said the border was shut. Is it still the case?
It was actually shut. The crossing was shut until yesterday, but there was an official statement issued by the Bab el-Hawa authorities in Syria that is now accessible to emergency humanitarian relief. Up until early hours of today, the traveling conditions were very difficult, but we know that there is a convoy that is coordinated by the UN humanitarian coordination is actually going to go in tomorrow morning. So we are waiting for this first convoy to go in and for the relief efforts to start arriving to northwest Syria.
For an organization such as yours, Nirvana Shawki, is it effectively you're dealing with 3 countries, not 2, what with Idlib being a rebel province of Syria?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't call it 3 countries, but the reality is that Idlib and Aleppo and many parts of the northwest Syria have been fully damaged. And of course, I mean, the whole zone of northwest Syria is in a very different setup than where we are looking for the rest of the northeast Syria or the rest of the country. And the main, I would say, the main challenges that we are seeing now, that it's not just we are trying to respond and to have access, but I think that the relief efforts from organizations working on the ground, like us in CARE International, and also Syrian organizations working on the ground, are directly impacted because the aid workers themselves are now part of the affected community. They are caring for their own families, their own lives, their own well-being, and actually struggling to find shelter for themselves to start with. So it's a very complicated operations, I would say, but everyone, I believe, is living up to the situation.
Living up to the situation. And those are, by the way, live images that you're seeing from Gaziantep in southern Turkey as they dig through the night. Gaziantep, where we can cross to France 24's Nadia Masi. Nadia, first of all, give us the weather right now, because these are people running on very little sleep. How cold is it?
Very cold indeed, Francois. You know, at night the temperature here drops to -10, sometimes -12 degrees, but nonetheless, the rescue effort here is continuing almost around the clock. I'm not sure whether you can see what's happening behind me, but just to give you a sense, we're in front of an apartment block that has been flattened, and even now, some more than 48 hours after that first quake, the rescue workers here believe there are 4 people still alive behind me here. They've asked us all to speak relatively quietly so that they can listen out for those people, listen out for their voices. They're saying they can detect heartbeats there, but they can't hear them at the moment. So it's a very cold night, but the rescue operations are continuing nonetheless.
Continuing nonetheless, and it's that drill, is it not, Nadia, where the rescuers pick from the rubble carefully and then every once in a while ask everyone to be hush?
That's it. That's exactly it. And you know, yesterday when I was witnessing a similar scene, what we saw and what we heard actually were family members suddenly shouting out, saying, "Oh, I think I can hear somebody there. This is where my dad's house is. Quick, everybody come." And then there would be this flurry of activity. Both the specialists from the Turkish army and volunteers would rush to that site. They would use listening devices to see if they could hear somebody there. If somebody was detected, others would then come through. And of course, for the families, it's this sort of anguished waiting game as they hope and they pray that their relatives will be found alive beneath the rubble. But as I say, you know, 48 hours have been and gone since that first quake now. So the chances are becoming slimmer, although of course not impossible, that more people will be found alive here.
Nadia, you've been out and about, and one of the biggest problems, of course, in the immediate aftermath were blocked roads. How easy was it to travel?
Yeah. It takes time. So many of the main roads aren't operating fully. Sometimes you have to use side streets to get around, but we have been able to travel. The harder thing to move around, clearly, though, is the aid. When we've been talking to people today, particularly in rural areas, the message has been, we don't have anything, or we have very little. Very ad hoc aid operations are reaching people, particularly in rural areas, not so much in the cities where I am, like Gaziantep now. People are saying, look, we're getting bread, but we have nowhere to sleep. We have not even a tent. People are sleeping in their cars in the freezing cold. They don't have heating, they don't have food. And actually, one thing that I've noticed here in the last day or so is anger is growing towards the government. You know, there have been reports, particularly from the southernmost province of Hatay, that anger was really growing there in the first 12 hours after the explosion, after the quake. People there saying no aid had reached them. Now we're seeing that in these regions where we are here as well. People pointing out that after that earthquake in 1999, you know, billions, in theory, was poured into protections to try and stop earthquakes from happening, and for relief operations should one take place. People here are asking, you know, our taxes contributed to that, so where's the help for us now?
Let me get a quick reaction from you on that, Nora Seni.
Yes, this is what I heard also coming from Turkey. People are saying that no help is reaching them. And they're starving. Not only that they are cold, but there's no places to sleep. Erdogan came to to Iskenderun, and he immediately said that these catastrophe cannot be planned. I mean, before, and if you, he's installing the means of people not talking anymore, because he said that criticizing us about the lack of help that reaches to people is a crime.
I want to get back to that point. Nirvana Shauki, before we let you go, was Turkey prepared for this, particularly after, as has been mentioned, all the criticism back in 1999?
It is very difficult to say that any country can be prepared for an earthquake of this scale. I have to be very honest, and this is something that we need to be cautious of, because yes, of course, the population are very disappointed, and many of our colleagues are actually struggling out in the cold with the very harsh winter conditions. But at the end of the day, this is one of the biggest disasters that Turkey have seen in ages, and it is very understandable that in order for rescue and relief efforts to take part, they will require some time.
One quick final question on you about that, Nirvana. An organization like yours, CARE, how does it coordinate with other groups so that you're not doubling up, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's. I think that this is part of the core essence of humanitarian efforts. There are multiple mechanisms for coordination that are both in Turkey and also in northwest Syria, and we are part of the bigger coordination groups that include international organizations like ourselves, and also local organizations and the UN agencies. And we really try our best to stay coordinated and aligned in regards of where relief efforts are being presented, and also where we don't need to overlap.
Nirvana Shauki of CARE, many thanks for being with us from Cairo. I want to go back to Gaziantep and to Nadia Massi. Nadia, a word on relief efforts. How are they going where you are now?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, Francois, there is a different picture from what we've seen in the cities and in the rural areas. We were in a farming area earlier today, and people there saying, look, government aid hasn't arrived yet. Those millions that have been promised, that are on their way from international allies of Turkey or countries in general, that hasn't arrived yet here either. What is there is this very local ad hoc attempt to provide food, but it's pretty basic, you know, and families saying, it's not well organized, so it may be that one family has 2 large vats of oil and the next family has absolutely nothing at all. Nobody has anything for heating, from what we've seen. So, you know, President Erdogan today said relief is coming, but in those rural areas particularly, it feels rather far away.
And with those floodlights behind you on what appears to be a collapsed building, can you describe to us what's happening behind you right now?
Well, a little earlier on, what was happening there is we were all told to be quiet because they believed they had heard movement there. 4 people, they believed, 4 heartbeats they had detected beneath the rubble there. It seems there's now more movement here again, so it may well be that perhaps that was a false alarm. Perhaps they need to do more investigations to see whether or not there are still 4 people alive there. But it's worth emphasizing, you know, this is something that we're seeing not just here in Gaziantep, but obviously across effectively all of southern Turkey right now is this massive rescue operation going on. This picture that you're looking at live on your screens, that is being mirrored across the south of the country. Such is the scale of the devastation after those twin quakes on Monday.
All right, amid the desolation, there are at times scenes of joy. Dateline, the Syrian rebel province of Idlib, and the moment the white helmets, that's the civil defense volunteers, rescued this little boy in the town of Salkin. Alina Chawaf, that little boy, beaming and as he's handled there by those white helmets. The white helmets, which the rest of the world had kind of forgotten. The civil war in Syria has been going on for 12 years. And here they are, spearheading the effort.
Yes, of course. And with very local resources, like you said. As you said in the beginning, Syria has been suffering from this war since 12 years. So Syria is very vulnerable. It's not even like Turkey. So till now, you can say we have 1,600 dead and more than 10,000 now injured inside Syria and a lot of building. And as you said in the beginning, there is no aid coming inside. So it is really terrible inside Syria because it's everything is local resources, even with a civil defense, even with everything like food and everything is local resources.
Badawi Ruban, is there a precedent for this where the earthquake takes place across several borders like this?
Very seldom, very seldom. We are facing rare situations. This is complicating and this will complicate the operations. We are dealing with two countries and we are dealing also with two countries where the conditions are also very different. We know that in Turkey we have services, we have good scientists, good engineers. We have also a building code. This is not very much the situation in Syria because of the 12 years of war. So it is now important that the setup for the, once the rescue and relief efforts will be in a way set up, definitely it is important to have all this international aid which is promised arrive very quickly, and it is important to have a coordination. The guest a few minutes ago mentioned that now the coordination is a little bit being initiated, but this coordination is going to be very essential in the coming days. Now we are also seeing some rays of hope that the frequency and the intensity of the aftershocks is diminishing. Your guest also mentioned, for example, today that there were aftershocks, but they were a little bit lower in magnitude and they were also not very frequent like yesterday. So this is also going to facilitate more the access to the collapsed buildings and is going to facilitate a little bit the rescue operation. Now, what is also to be said is that what we are seeing is that the buildings are collapsed not only because of the perhaps bad condition of the building, but because we are seeing a phenomena whereby we see the soil of the foundation of this building. We call it a liquefied soil. So we have a phenomena where we have a liquefaction of the soil. This liquefaction,
due to the tremor?
Yes, due to the tremor. Due to the size of the energy released, the soil was liquefied in some locations. This, of course, is not very often seen in major earthquakes.
Of course, Nadia Masi, whether the border is open or closed, there are Syrians on both sides, what with so many refugees where you are.
Yes, absolutely. Turkey has taken in a lot of refugees during that 12-year civil war in Syria. I have to say, though, the people that I've been speaking to in Syria over the past couple of days have really emphasized just how catastrophic the situation is on their side of the border. I spoke to a doctor in Bab al-Hawal, which is just on the other side of this border. That's where Syrians are hoping the aid will start to come through in the coming days. He said to me, look, I have been a doctor in 2015, in 2016. Those were the years when the Syrian government and Russia were using barrel bombs to bomb cities like where he lives in Aleppo in the north of the country. He said, it's almost never been as bad as it is right now. He said just the scale of people that arrived, first of all, with conditions that we simply couldn't treat. A number of people that needed blood transfusions, for example, they weren't able to provide them. And he said aid is needed desperately on the other side of the border. And you may well have talked about that already with your panelists, but that is increasingly a political issue as well, because President Bashar al-Assad of Syria has said, look, all aid for my country needs to come through my government. But some of those northwestern provinces of Syria that we're talking about here are not under the control of the Syrian government. They're under the control of the opposition that have been very critical of Bashar al-Assad's government, to put it mildly. So it's very unlikely that Assad will allow aid to go to those regions, and that's causing huge concern for those people trapped on the ground there.
Lina Shawaf, is it just as bad from what you're monitoring? And again, you're working with colleagues from across the border. Is it just as bad whether you're in Aleppo province under government control or in Idlib province under rebel control?
It's all over, but it depends where the earthquake is. It's like headed.
Turkey
Idlib. Idlib, Turkey. But Idlib is so much. Turkey, it depends where is the area. For example, Marash, like you said, and Hatay is the most affected one. But Idlib is the most affected one inside Syria. And because in Idlib, even in Aleppo, aid or relief, nothing. Yeah, nothing is like aid or relief is going there, like through Bab al-Hawa or anything. So it's a disaster. So yeah.
All right, so bad in Aleppo and even worse in Idlib. We were talking about it just a short while ago with Nora Seni, that there's grief and sometimes bitterness on the Turkish side, like on Tuesday when citizens of the southern city of Karaman bemoaned what they perceived as a slow response to all of this.
Look at our situation here. Where is the state? Where are they? I can't get my brother back from the ruins. I can't get my nephew back. For 2 days, we haven't seen the state around here. They didn't bring a single brick. Not one single brick.
Where are they now? Where? Don't you have fear of God? They don't have mercy. They don't have compassion. Rather than fighting with each other, why don't they come here? Look, do you see a single one of them?
Now, as was mentioned earlier, Turkey's president this Wednesday, since those people spoke, on a visit to the quake-damaged city of Kahramanmaraş, he acknowledged minor problems at the outset of the rescue effort, but insists they've since been solved.
We will never allow our citizens to be left out on the streets. I'm asking our people not to give the provocateurs an opportunity and only pay attention to the statements coming from the Disaster Management Authority. I also ask our press members not to allow them. Today is a time of unity and solidarity.
Çünkü bugün birlik olma zamanıdır, dayanışma zamanıdır.
Nadia Masi, after Recep Tayyip Erdogan made those remarks, Twitter was down in Turkey.
Twitter was down briefly, yes, that's right, Francois, and it's been pointed out many times in the past couple of days that, look, this Turkish government has in the past seen to crack down on people who are criticizing what it has to say on social media, and indeed we have seen that today. 18 people detained for posts criticizing the government's response to these earthquakes, and 5 people arrested as well. So that testament to one of the ways that the government is responding to what's happening here. And that anger you just heard there from residents here in Turkey is something that I have heard myself many times today. People looking at me and saying, look, where is the state? We are helping each other. We are helping our neighbors. We are volunteering. There are local aid groups here, but we are not seeing the army, and we are not seeing the government, the state helping us, particularly in those rural areas outside of big cities.
And Nora Seni, adding to the perfect storm element to it is the fact that we're coming up to elections in Turkey.
Yes. So Erdogan has to be successful in the management of these crises, big crises. And we can be sure that he will be at his best. But the fact is that these 2 days, the people were not satisfied by the presence of the state. But Erdogan declared the emergency state, which makes it possible for him to manage the thing by decrees. So I think the Twitter limitations comes maybe with this, but the first...
The state of emergency, if I understand correctly, it's 3 months, and it's for the provinces that are affected by the earthquake.
Yes, for 10 provinces.
Right.
Or for the old towns, for the old 10 cities. And for 3 months, but it can be prolonged. But the fact is that there is no possibility. There is a geographical impossibility. For example, the road from Turkey to Idlib is closed. Is difficult to access because it's the road is broken. Reyhan door, for example. But this is not the only thing. That there I cannot explain why help like food and tents, for example, the installation of tents do not come. There is a confusion, there is a chaos. For example, there are 55,000 people from outside who came with material, dogs, etc. We never saw them. I mean, the coordination is the coordination.
But just
working?
to play devil's advocate, you heard Badouai Ruban. The scale of this earthquake is huge.
Yes, but the question of the cohesion between the teams, the collaboration within the teams is questionable. Then we only see Turkish troops in the rescue business, and where are the others? I mean, they made it possible for them to come to this region or not? I don't know.
In any post-earthquake situation, we have different phases, successive phases. We are still now 40 hours after the earthquake occurrence. We are 40 hours. We are not weeks after the earthquake. This is now the phase of priority to relief, rescue, and search. And this phase, unfortunately, is going to last several hours and several days. And everything should now give priority to this phase. After we finish this phase, we will be in the immediate rehabilitation phase. So now it is important that the rescue and relief operations be made somehow very quickly under a coordination, a solid coordination. Hopefully, we heard today, for example, the World Health Organization has announced today that they are dispatching a high-level team. This is welcome. We need also to see other international organizations, other united organizations also send immediately whatever experience, whatever team, and whatever material and whatever resources they have.
So they can be as efficient.
Where are they? I mean,
We cannot have this in 40 hours.
They came.
They
came. They are in Turkey. So where are they?
Well, we know that World Health Organization also, they have, and also the United Nations has since 11 years on the ground, they have teams, they have officers. Now, what we need to do is to collect the puzzle together.
Right. Make sure the coordination goes well.
Absolutely. This is very
avoid
important.
Some of the mistakes of the past. Everybody remembers most notably Haiti, where the coordination did not always work. Again, if you're just joining us here on France 24, it's 40 hours on, and so far, 11,000 dead on the Turkish and Syrian sides of the border from these earthquakes. Nadia Massi is with us from Gaziantep, and joining us now from Adana, that's also in southern Turkey, near the epicenter of the other of the two quakes, is France 24 correspondent Jasper Mortimer. And Jasper, you remember 1999 when there was that big earthquake at the time. The response, the criticism that it's not been fast enough everywhere in the face of such huge devastation. How does it look from where you are standing right now?
Yes, in the first earthquake, there were two earthquakes in 1999, and in the first, the state performed abysmally, and I'm sure that was a factor in the defeat of Bülent in the coming election. I think there was an election 3 years after that. Now, today, look, in some places, the effort has been very good. When we were in Osmaniye today, we were in a tent city that had been erected for survivors of the earthquake. About half of the 3,000 people in the tent city were Syrians. Turkey was making no distinction between Syrians and Turks. People came up to us knowing that we were foreign press and thanked us for our governments sending relief to Turkey. The spirit in Osmaniye was that the relief effort had been positive. However, in other places, Reuters is quoting a woman in Malatya saying, "Where is the state?" On CNN Turk television tonight, which is a pro-government channel, one had the rare spectacle of a survivor, somebody who had actually been pulled out of the rubble of a building and had donned a yellow jacket, as all the rescue workers wear, and was helping clear rubble from a building. But when he saw the CNN Turk reporter, he came up to her and got more and more worked up until he was hysterical, and he was saying that there weren't enough machine operators, there weren't enough rescue operators on the building where his a little brother, mother and father were trapped. He believed they were still alive, and he was so hysterical that it was difficult to get out from him where this building was. But when he did reveal that to a professional rescue worker who immediately said, "Yes, we have a team there," he said, "Yes, but you don't have enough people there. You're not making work, you're not working fast enough." You know, there are places, that scene on CNN Turk was in Kahramanmaraş. There's also places in Antakya where President Erdogan went today, and bodies are lying on the ground outside a hospital. They haven't even found a morgue for these bodies.
It's patchy. It depends on where you're standing. Nadia Massi, we're going to let you go because it is cold where you are in Gaziantep. But before we do, I see that they've turned off for the time being those floodlights behind you.
They have turned off the floodlights, indeed, Francois. The search, though, is still ongoing. There's still optimism here and hope that those people, the 4 people they believe are there, will be pulled out alive. There are family members, residents gathering around us here, still hoping for a miracle here, some 48 hours on. But if I can just add a little to what Jasper was just saying there about the anger and the comparison with 1999, that is something we've heard time and again today. And after that earthquake in 1999, there was this earthquake tax, as it was dubbed. Turks were had to give money, a sort of levy to the state to a tune of $3 billion in total towards trying to prevent earthquakes and trying to ensure better relief should one take place. Now that has happened, people here are asking us, where is the state? We are hungry, we are cold, we don't have tents even to sleep in, we are desperate, and we are really, really angry. I think that is the message I've heard most today.
Nadia Massi reporting live from Gaziantep. Many thanks. We'll be checking in with you later on in upcoming editions. Jasper Mortimer mentioning there those international relief efforts that are coming in from all over. The earthquake so momentous that, well, old rivals are putting aside differences. Greek rescuers in Iskenderdum here in these images, digging a little girl out from under the rubble. The help's coming from all over, including Russia and Ukraine. Correspondent Shona Bhattacharya followed the French unit that's now operational in Osmaniye.
It's 2 a.m. in Osmaniye. Lieutenant Colonel Chauveau from a French military civilian security unit shows us around the site his team is working on with their Turkish counterparts. An 8-story building collapsed. The debris is compact, and the rescue dogs didn't smell anything. Rescue, clearing rubble, medical assistants, dog-sniffing teams, and drone pilots, in all 74 French army personnel have arrived in Turkey.
We're really at the disposal of the Turkish authorities. They're the ones who tell us where to look for potential victims. We expect the death toll to be very high. And we stand in solidarity with the Turkish public in this terrible tragedy. We're doing everything we can to support them and provide our help.
The French rescue workers will remain as long as Turkey needs them.
We don't necessarily have the same methods, but things are going very smoothly, even with the language barrier. It can be tricky, but we share the same goals and the same energy, so it's going very well.
It's really important for us to bolster our teams with international support. It can help us save more lives in less time.
As time ticks by, the size of the affected area and the cold chip away at the chances of finding survivors.
And Jasper Mortimer, you were in Osmaniye earlier.
Correct. And walked down one street where there were more than 6 buildings that had concertinaed. Standing, every building was cracked so severely that it was uninhabitable. There wasn't a shop open in that street, and you saw that people were discreetly creeping into the buildings to take out their belongings. It was all of the buildings.
Jasper, I'm going to interrupt you because we're having audio issues. We're having audio issues with the line there. Apologies for that in Adana. You were mentioning earlier, Badawi Ruban, about how there's talking about UN coordination, but there are loads of different countries that already have, as you saw in that report, their rescue units on site. So
this is very welcome. And you mentioned also what happened in 2010, after the earthquake in Haiti. Unfortunately, at that time, we had, several days of uncoordination. We had massive arrival of rescue team, of national teams from all over the world, and the Haitians were left several days before they can see this aid, before they can see improvement in the situation. Now, this is going to be a challenge now, both in Turkey and Syria. We have to draw the lessons of what happened, not only in Haiti, but in other countries, and try to reach very, very quickly.
Through the Turkish authorities?
I don't know. This is going to depend on how the setup will be made, whether the United Nations, hopefully, will be entrusted with a coordination role. This would be a very nice option, in my opinion.
In your opinion, the UN is an option. We're mentioning Turkey. Again, let's not neglect Syria. Over in Aleppo province, the Russians are the ones boosting their help. The civil war means less help from other parties, and a plea that we heard, there you see some of those Russians that are helping there, a plea from Damascus-based charities for the West to put aside the sanctions that have been in place against the regime of Bashar al-Assad.
The Red Crescent and others are asking the international community, including the European Union, all countries and member states of the European Union, to lift economic sanctions on Syria.
Is this a case where the international community should put aside sanctions against Damascus? Lina Shawaf, can you hear us?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, is this a case where the international community should put aside sanctions against Damascus?
As we see, like they ask to give everything through the Syrian government, but I don't think nobody believes from us that the Syrian government will deliver any like relief or like aids to the north of Syria. So this is a big problem. So it has to, we have to find, or the international community has to find another way to deliver all this aid and humanitarian relief to the north of Syria.
Jasper Mortimer, I believe the connection is back with you in Adana. How coordination with the international community from the Turkish side, how is that going?
Look, I think that is going well, but I haven't actually asked Turkish officials about that. But it seems as if international teams and Turkish teams are working well together. There doesn't seem to be any friction. You were impressed by the fact that the Greeks came here. This trend, every earthquake Turkey suffers, the Greeks offer to help. And this trend began with the 1999 earthquake, in which there were two earthquakes separated by a few weeks, in which the Greeks sent rescue teams, and then the term was coined earthquake diplomacy. Francois, if I can just tell you one other thing, since I spoke to you earlier this evening, 2 body bags have been from the mound of concrete behind me, and they were excavated very discreetly. The rescue workers held up a blanket so that nobody could see the bodies as they emerged. They were then put into black body bags and carried down the mound of rubble, strapped to a stretcher, put straight into an ambulance and taken away. I should add that most of the bodies being brought out at this time have found to have died of hypothermia, not of injuries. That shows what a toll the cold weather is taking down here. However, miracles are still occurring. 8 people including 2 children, have been rescued alive in the last few hours in Kahramanmaraş.
Nora Seni.
The hours are important. I agree that there has been tolerance for the coordination of the teams and the rescue, but time is running and hours are running. I mean, the people died. Died from the meteorology for the
from the cold.
From the cold. So even if they are down in the ruins, and they have to be. But only 2 helicopters were given for this purpose. to bring them to hospitals and things like that.
It's good to hear from your correspondent that there is already, in a way, coordination in some way. It's good to. I think we cannot too much emphasize the importance of this coordination. It is very important now that all this international aid that will arrive, it is very important to make efficient use of it, because after all, it is the survival of the whole population which is affected, which will be at stake now. We are not talking about hours and days, we are talking about a situation which will take several weeks, several months, and maybe several years. So it is important also that the population be properly informed that we are now living in a time where social media is, as opposed to 10 years ago in other disasters, social media play a role. So in case the social media is going to play a negative effect, we have to make sure that positive also effect is going to be possible, and to avoid any misunderstandings.
All right, these are images that we're seeing live from Osmaniye, where those French, we saw that report earlier of those French, that French rescue unit helping alongside the Turkish who are leading this charge. Lina Shawaf, you mentioned at the outset that there are fewer aftershocks. Just a personal question, a very brief one. Do you see yourself getting a better night's sleep where you are in Gaziantep?
I hope, because we haven't been sleeping since now more than 60 hours. It's not 40 hours. It's more than 60 hours. So I hope people can sleep today. Most of them, they sleep in the cars, or like we see in the center, or there is some of the people put a little tent in front of their home and sleep in it. So today I think it's like, as I said, the aftershock is a little bit more like taking 4-5 hours. So I hope people can sleep today. I hope we can sleep today, because we are so exhausted.
Well, what is certain is that those rescue workers behind Jasper Mortimer there in Adana, they are taking it, as you told us earlier, in shifts, and they'll be going through the night. Jasper, I want to thank you so much for being live with us for this special edition. I want to thank you as well, Lina Shawaf in Gaziantep. I want to thank Nora Seni and Badawi Ruban. Thank you for being with us here. More coverage to come on France 24.